Right. So I think the best way to encapsulate this main theme of the chapter mitzvot here in the 13 Petalled Rose is by saying that the mitzvot is really our ways to turn our material body into a spiritual entity, or our material lives into spiritual lives. And for that, God, of course, gives us an entire structure. We spoke about the structure of the Shabbat and the holidays, in which God says to us, hey, I want you to dedicate some days in your calendar to come and meet me, to come and celebrate our connection together, to celebrate our oneness. That's with the holidays, with Shabbat each and every week. But we also have many different mitzvot that seem to be very materialistic, or at least seem to include many materialistic items, but they are there in order for us, again, to create this bridge between earth and heaven. So really, the best, I think, summary or synopsis of this chapter thus far is that God has given us plenty of ways for us to connect with him and to transform our human experience here in this world into a divine one. And in a way, that's the goal of man, to be able to ensure that even though he may be living in this world, he reminds himself all the time that he's not of this world. And because he's not of this world, it's his duty to take his divine being and change the world with it by elevating the world to his or her divine level. That's really the big thought here. And we'll continue, as you mentioned, Gila, here on page 121, the mitzvot and the halachot. Does anyone want to read? Mitzvot and the halachot, anyone?
Okay, Rabbi, even though I'm not, it doesn't matter. You can't see me, which is probably
I
better.
can see you, you can see us.
Yes, I can't see you either. It's okay. This is just another
No,
level.
we see
No, we
you.
can see, we can see you. We
No,
can.
see you. We
So
see
that's
But I
what
you.
can't
counts.
see
Yeah.
you. Oh, that's not fair. Okay. All right, I'll read.
Fine. Yeah. Yeah.
The mitzvot and the halachot pertaining to what a Jew may or may not eat, all that concerns kashrut, are based on the principle that a man cannot live a higher, nobler life of the spirit without having the body undergo some suitable preparation for it. From one point of view, the precepts concerning what is allowed and what is forbidden to eat make up a sort of diet of sanctity, a system of instructions guiding a person's choice of food so that he may derive maximum good from the mutual influence of body and soul. As regards holiness in the Jewish view, the eating of forbidden food is not only a transgression, and so a unification with the domain of evil, but also an act damaging to the network of relations between body and soul. The principle involved here is that food is a matter of levels of essence, graduating in quality of being from the level of matter to that of a living thing, plants, animals, and special kinds of animals, with a proportionately increasing number of restrictions in the way each type of food is prepared and eaten. Thus, in the domain of matter, nothing is actually prohibited because this domain is not sensitive to distinctions between the holy and the unholy. Even in the domain of vegetation, the only restrictions relate to that which grows in the land of Israel. All that grows outside the Holy Land is considered edible at all times, whereas rules limit the eating of things grown within the country, on the premise that the holiness of the land gives things a higher level of being and a sensitivity to holiness.
Right. So let's just go into the practicality of what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here, and then we'll dig deeper. Practicality of what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here is that obviously there are laws of kashrut, of keeping kosher, that pertain to certain foods that are allowed and certain foods that are not allowed. Now, beyond that, there are also laws of kashrut that pertain not to foods, but to the contamination of foods. So, for example, some vegetables need to be checked for bugs. Lettuce, even broccoli, they need to be checked for bugs. Why? Because bugs are prohibited, and we don't want to be eating bugs when we eat that piece of lettuce, so we have to check it beforehand. Some prohibitions relate to the land of Israel, as he's saying here. So the fruits and vegetables of Israel need to undergo a process called Trumot and Ma'asrot, which really stems from the times of the Jerusalem temple, in which anyone living in Israel had to give some taxes, so to speak, from their fruits and vegetables to the Jerusalem temple, to the priests who were there dedicating their lives to serve the temple and to serve the Jewish people. So as a sign of collaboration, of gratitude, of solidarity, we gave some of our fruits and vegetables to the Kohanim, to the priest of the temple, and to the Levites too, because they didn't get a salary from the temple. They actually got their salaries from the taxes that we gave them, either through money or through foods and vegetables. So ever since, the fruits and vegetables that come from Israel have to undergo the same process. Yes, we have no Jerusalem temple yet. We have no priest to give our fruits and vegetables to. Actually, we do have priests to give our fruits and vegetables to, so we can give a portion of some of our fruits and vegetables to priests in Israel, or give them simply to tzedakah, to charity, to remind ourselves again of this taxation of fruits and vegetables that came from the Jerusalem temple. So therefore, when one buys fruits and vegetables from Israel, we have to make sure that they underwent that process, or that the person himself buying them undergoes that process. The reason this pertains particularly to the land of Israel is not just because of the Jerusalem temple, but this deeper spiritual reason, as Rabbi Stein says here, is because Israel is a holy land. And therefore, the fruits and vegetables need to be also attended to with a sense of holiness, with a sense of greater importance. And we execute that relationship with the fruit of holiness by taking away some of the fruit or some of the fruits that we may have and giving it away to God, reminding us of how holy the land of Israel is and how holy its produce is. So that's the practical level of what Rabbi Steinsaltz is speaking about, all these laws that pertain to food. But the deeper level, again, is to remind us that we have a soul within, and not everything is healthy for that soul, just as it is in the other worlds that we engage in, whether it's the world of jobs, the world of entertainment, the world of family and relationships. So it is in the world of food. Not every food is good for the soul. It's the deeper level of the laws of the reason behind the laws of kashrut. The soul, the divine soul, wants to eat a fruit that is holy, because the soul is holy, and therefore it feels, or it's nurtured. The soul is better nurtured when we eat those fruits that are kosher, or those fruits that underwent this process of Trumot Masrot, if they come from Israel. Again, because it's good for the soul. Just as, there is music that is good for the soul and music that is bad for the soul. There is, things that we see that are good for the soul, things that we see that are bad for the soul. There are words that we pronounce, that we utter, that are good for the soul, and words that are bad for the soul. So too it is with food. There is food, specific foods that we eat that are good for the soul, that are in line with the holiness of the soul, and those that are not. And therefore, there are a bunch of laws called the laws of kashrut, in order to ensure that our soul not only feels comfortable within us, but also feels in sync with all of our bodily activities. Because ultimately, as mentioned at the very beginning, ultimately the goal of the human being is to find this complete alignment between body and soul, to create this complete alignment between body and soul, so that the soul and the body are true friends, are true partners. They cooperate entirely together with complete oneness, so that whatever the body does, it's not just okay with the soul, but it's also what the soul wants to do. And whatever the soul wants to do is also what the body does. That complete partnership is the ultimate goal of life. And in a way, it includes, of course, the bodily activities that we engage in, such as eating. So that's really the big idea here. And we can go deeper into this, but I have a story that comes to mind, but I do want to hear your comments or questions or disagreements and so on. So I'll just share with you what the Talmud has to say, just particularly regarding food and so on. It's an interesting passage from the Talmud. It comes from the tractate of Shabbat, I think page 88, 89, something like that, where it speaks about, it's fascinating. It speaks about how when Mashiach will come, God will come and redeem the Jewish people. But before he redeems the Jewish people, he wants to see if they are meriting this redemption. So what is he going to do? He's going to go first to Abraham. And he's going to say to Abraham, look, I want to redeem the Jewish people, but they've sinned. How can I redeem them? So Abraham says to them, well, just forgive them. He says, I can't forgive them. Find me some merits. Abraham says, I forget the exact passage, but Abraham says, you know what, move on. So God moves on to Jacob. And Jacob again says the same thing, just forgive them, and doesn't really have an answer. Then he goes to Isaac, who stands up for the Jewish people. That's what the Talmud says. When Mashiach will come, God will go to Isaac as the third person in the row. Even though the order, that's interesting also in of itself, but we won't deviate because the order should have been Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But God first goes to Abraham, then to Jacob, and then goes to Isaac. Then he says to Isaac, I want to redeem the Jewish people, but they've sinned. Isaac says to God, well, let's think about this. How many years does a person live? 70 years? Average. Today is a little more, thank God. Much more, thank God. But back in the day, right, in the days of the Talmud, certainly 70 years. So Isaac says, well, deduct from this 25 years of sleep, or 20 years of sleep. I think maybe 20 years, let's say 20 years of sleep. So how many years are left already that he could have sinned? 50 years. Now deduct from the 50 years, 25 years of eating and going to the bathroom. How many years are left? 25 years. Deduct from those 25 years, I think the first, I have to look back at the passage, but the first 20 years in which a person is exempt from punishment. At least until you bar and bat mitzvah, you're exempt from punishment. But you're exempt from heavenly punishment until the age of 20, according to the Torah. So deduct those years. Now, how much are you left with? Just a few years? I think it was 12 years altogether in the calculation of the Talmud. So something must have gone wrong with my calculation, but 12 years he's left for a person to sin out of 70 years that he lives. So Isaac then goes on to say to God, you know what? If you can't forgive them for those 12 years, I'll take 6 on me and 6 on you. And if you can't even take 6 on you, God, then I'll take all of them on me because I've already sacrificed myself to you during the binding of Isaac. Put them all on me. And God was so happy with that answer that he says, you know what, Isaac, you've answered my question and solved my problem. And then the Jewish people will be redeemed, thanks to Isaac's calculation. But I'm just thinking of this calculation of this cute passage from the Talmud, because indeed, so much of our life is spent on mundane activities, whether it's sleeping, going to the bathroom, eating, and so on. And it would be a pity for a person to only have, say, right, 12 years is what is left, according to this passage from Talmud, to only have 12 years of years that are holy. We can actually extend those 12 years to 7 years that are holy. How so? By turning those mundane activities into holy ones. And there's a big difference between a life in which only 12 years are holy or life in which 7 years are holy. Holy meaning that the body and the soul, again, are completely aligned, like we were speaking about before. If we can achieve that, then no doubt that too reverberates in heaven. That too brings much pleasure to God, and he comes too and partners with us. That's just the story that came to mind. Anyhow, any comments, questions, please? I don't want to be monologuing. Joyce, it's good to see you. I'm sorry if you had any difficulties. I was apologizing before. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Joyce,
I've been trying for a half hour.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sent another. I apologize again,
Yeah.
and I can't see any of you. This is really a strange feeling, I have to say.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can see me, I can't see you. It's kind of like, Hashem sees us, but we can't see him.
Yeah, well, we're not Hashem. We're far from Hashem.
It's a strange feeling, but I just want to say to Joyce, apology again.
Yeah.
Is the first email I sent out had a small U, not a big U. Thank God you're in.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
Rabbi, we will get this recorded, and I
Yes,
will.
absolutely. This is recorded, so we'll pass
Great.
it on. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
My
Okay.
apologies again.
That's
Anyhow,
great.
okay. Sometimes, by the way, it reminds me of what we're speaking about. Sometimes there's so much holiness that it disrupts this world. This world goes crazy. It doesn't know how to contain the holiness. So I want to think that maybe this is the reason why we're having so many difficulties. There's so much holiness in a Zoom class that is disrupting the technology behind it.
So where does this have?
I like that.
So Rabbi, where does this half hour go? Is it the hours of the 12 hours or the half hour that we just spent trying to get online?
It wasn't half hour. Let's not exaggerate.
What
But,
was it?
For me, it
Well,
was.
2 classes.
oh, for you, yes, Joyce, yeah. Where does it go? Well, it's part of studying Torah. You know, they say that actually there's a whole, I don't want to deviate from the discussion here, but actually it's connected to a whole halachic discussion among modern day halachic authorities. Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, for example, I know has a whole responsa regarding the fact that the question of back in the day, when you went to look for a specific part of the Torah, you were researching, say, what the Torah has to say about the laws of eating kosher that we're learning about. So you don't have Google back in the day. You don't have any internet or any technology that helps you, right? So you had to go to the library. You had to search the book. You have to find it in the book. That took a lot of time. All that time, though, is considered part of the mitzvah of studying Torah, the research that you're doing. But today, you can skip all that time. So by going to Rabbi Google or by going to or using technology, right? Or even calling a rabbi to ask the answer to your question. That takes much less than going to research it yourself in some library. So the question is, if someone still decides to go the old-fashioned way, to go to the library and research it himself, is that considered the mitzvah of learning Torah? Is that research, that time that he's spending on researching, is that considered the mitzvah of studying Torah? To be a mitzvah for the person because he can do it in much less time, right? By using technology. And according to most opinions, it's not considered, because if you can go the shorter way, you go to the shorter way. But today we had no choice. We're trying to log on, and that certainly is considered part of the mitzvah of studying Torah. To answer your question, Chana. Okay.
Rabbi, can I just make a quick comment? So,
yes, Gila.
The effort that was made by everyone and the collaborative energy to make this work is greater, I think, than the instant gratification of the expectation that when I push a button, things will develop exactly the way I want them to, when I want them to. So really what you're saying is that the effort, the talking between different people to figure out how to do this, your involvement, Chana, myself,
right.
Joyce's, frustration, how do I get on? All of this energy is geared towards learning this material, and this effort should be viewed right as part of the even a greater effort than we usually do. We push a button and we're on.
That's right. And it
Gila must be a therapist. I mean, I can just
Yes.
But very good, very, very good. It teaches us the value in work, in working for results, not just getting them immediately. Teaches us also the value of collaboration and of working together, not just working. So thank you, Gila. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, I think it teaches us also appreciation for that which we do have. So there's a lot of lessons to learn from this. Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Also teaches us patience.
It also teaches us patience. That's right. Very good. Exactly. Okay, good. All right, let's continue on page 122, maybe. The principle is more, unless again, there's more comments. But okay, the principle is more conspicuous. Does anyone want to read?
I'll read, Rabbi.
Thank you, please, very please.
Okay. The principle is more conspicuous in the domain of life of animal meat. There are, of course, several categories of prohibition. First, all living creatures without backbone are absolutely forbidden. Most fish with fins and scales are permitted, and the others are not. Also, there is no special preparation needed for eating fish. Of fowl, there is a certain list of birds that one may eat, but they have to be slaughtered in a special way with the recitation of certain prayers with the least possible amount of pain and suffering, with the letting of all the blood and so forth, so that the meat may be fit to merge with the human body. Even more severe are the rules concerning the eating of the higher animals, only a smaller number of which are permitted. The slaughtering process and the preparation before cooking are prescribed with exactitude. The mixing of certain types of food like meat and milk products is absolutely forbidden.
Right. Okay, very good. So yeah, we have an overview of the laws of kashrut. I would say that the underlying approach or the underlying basis of these laws is that we can only eat animals or foods that have more refined characteristics than, say, predators. That's why the kosher animals, if we're speaking about animals, are all refined, non-predator animals, because we believe that you are what you eat. And by eating predators, you might inherit some of those characteristics. That's the deeper reason behind these laws that were just mentioned. It's true for the fish that are kosher. Fish that are kosher are usually more refined fish. And certainly true for the birds that are kosher. We don't know that birds don't have signs, but there's a list of birds that are kosher in the Torah. Vultures, for example, are not kosher because they're predators. Pigeons are because they're much more refined. So it's true also for the birds. Now, in addition to that, we are also very, very careful about the way the animal dies. And when we talk about slaughtering animals, if you look at the laws of kashrut, we're very, very careful about not inflicting any type of pain on the animal when we slaughter it, to the point that, for example, just this halakha comes to mind, that the knife that is used by slaughterers is a knife that has to be checked each and every time to make sure that it has no bump whatsoever, that it's as smooth as could be, so that when the animal is slaughtered, it dies immediately, that there's no feeling of pain by any bump on a knife, because knives are not allowed to have bumps. That's one little detail. But there's many more details, again, to ensure that the animal is treated with dignity and respect. Third but not least, maybe one last thing that these laws are based on, and that is that the only justification to eating animals or fish, or chicken, fowls, the only justification to that is if we can elevate those animals to a higher realm. How so? By using them and the energy that they give us, the proteins that they give us, in order to serve God, in order to do good in the world, good that they themselves as animals can't do. So when we consume them and we have them within us and we use them to do good, then we're elevating them, because as animals, they could not do that. But now that they're joining forces with us by us eating them, then they could do that. And we're elevating therefore the animals to a more spiritual and divine realm. That's the only justification to eating animals. That's why, by the way, many rabbis, until this very day, don't eat meat during the week. They only eat meat because during the week, they're not sure whether they can really use that energy and that force that the animals gives them to do good. When do they eat meat? On Shabbat. On Shabbat, it's a mitzvah to have meat, to have fish at least. And they know then that with the holiness of Shabbat, they'll be able to use their energy appropriately, or their life force, the life force of the animals appropriately. But during the week, they're skeptic about their ability, and therefore they don't touch it, because again, the justification for us to eat animals is only if we can really redeem them or elevate them to a higher level, again, by using all that they give us for Hashem's work in the world. So that's also important to note.
Rabbi, I've got
Yes.
a question for you.
Please.
I have a brother-in-law that works in he does processing anything that's on an assembly line kind of thing. And he has been in slaughterhouses. He said that the process of killing in the kosher environment was probably the most painful for the animal. Why would that be based on what this is saying?
I've been to kosher slaughterhouses and non-kosher slaughterhouses. We did that as part of our rabbinic training. That's the last time I walked into it, but in Italy, so maybe it's different. But I saw the opposite. I witnessed the opposite. The kosher slaughterhouses were actually very, very sensitive towards the pain of animals. I don't know. I don't know.
It was a very slow process and very bad for the animal. That's compared to the way they were killed normally, and I was surprised.
I mean, I don't want to be too graphic here.
Well, this is in the US.
Some of you had lunch.
If you tell me how they're killed, I will be a vegetarian on the spot. Let's not go into that.
Yeah, let's not go into that. I can tell you from my firsthand experience that I really witnessed the opposite. Really. And Italy, again, America, I haven't been to slaughterhouse, but I do believe that all kosher slaughterhouses have to follow the same rules, which is what makes them kosher. Whether they are in America or in Argentina or in Italy. So I don't know. I really don't know. I would love to speak to him to learn more about it. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. But there's also a whole commandment of Tsar Ba'alei Chaim, whether we're killing them or not. We can't make an animal suffer. It doesn't matter whether, we're killing them or not. Making an animal suffer, even, we have to be careful with that if we have pets. Even with dogs, cats, we can make them suffer, not one bit. Even if we, play with them ball and I don't know, by mistake kick them or whatever it is. We have to be careful. We can't. So actually, I think Jewish law is very, very sensitive to animals altogether. But yeah, so I don't know exactly what he's referring to, but I hope it's not the case. Okay. I just want to go into one more thing before we continue on. I know today is very kosher-based year, laws of kashrut and the deeper significance of it. So it's one of the maybe most dominant mitzvot in Jewish life. But the last line here, the mixing of certain types of foods like meat and milk products is absolutely forbidden. Now, in general, the 613 commandments that we have in the Torah are divided into three categories. Category number one is what's called chukim, irrational laws. And then there's category number two, which is called edut, laws that are understandable, but without God commanding them, we would not have thought of them. And then there are laws that are called mishpatim, which is really the majority of the laws, which are logical laws, like do not steal, respect your parents, or whatever it may be. Now, the laws of kashrut, of keeping kosher, fall into the category of chukim, and some say edut. In other words, some say they're completely illogical, some say they're somewhat logical, but we wouldn't have thought about it if God hadn't commanded us to keep kosher. So there is an element of the laws of kashrut that is illogical. Why the need for these types of laws? Why chukim? Why God can't? Why would God not give us commandments that we can really understand, that we can connect to with our hearts and with our minds? Why do things almost robotically? Why do things that are completely illogical? And the answer is because a relationship is tested not by what a person does for the other that he or she understands, but rather by what a person does for the other that he or she does not understand. If I say, do something for my wife, and I have no reason, no logic, doesn't make sense to me, but my wife is asking me to do it. If I do it, even though I don't understand it, that's when I prove that I truly love her. If I do it because I understand it, maybe I'm doing it for myself. Maybe just because it makes sense and it's good for me also, so all right. But if I'm doing it when I'm not understanding it altogether, that's when I prove that I truly love.
So, Rabbi, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mark. Now I'm saying in a way that's the laws of kashrut and all those laws that are irrational. I did them just for God, and that comes to prove our deeper love to God, unconditional love to God. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Mark. Go for it.
No, the alternative is that the words of Bertrand Russell, who argues that all of the commandments that have been given by Hashem would have been given and have been given in society in order to manage society in an effective way. So there's quite a bit of thought that says by the atheist community that religious commandments are really driven by societal needs and not divine. And thankfully, we have some commandments that are not logical and therefore go against the arguments of Bertrand Russell and a number of other people. Right.
No, that's true. That's true. They will go against it. But I would agree that there's certainly benefit that sometimes we only know of or learn about much later on to laws that are irrational. So for example, mixing meat and milk is part of these irrational laws. But on the other hand, today with the advancement of the anatomy of the body and the medical findings and so on, we know that it's not good for you to have meat and then milk, because you're killing the rhythm of the digestive system. So there's always, people that find reason to things that have no reason. But I think they have yet to find a reason. There's another law in the Torah to the mitzvah of shatnez, in which one is not allowed to mix wool and linen. You're not allowed to not only mix wool and linen, but you're not allowed to wear clothing that has a mixture of wool and linen. It's also one of those illogical laws. Why? Doesn't say why, but again, it's one of those laws that we have to do just because. And I'm sure that people will in the future find the reason why, or try to find a scientific basis to it. But nonetheless, there's great value to doing things just because. Not too many things. Most of the commandments are not like that. But again, it proves and enhances in a way our relationship with God. It proves that it's authentic. It's completely objective, or completely unconditional. That's the better word. Yeah. No, thank you for that.
Sorry, Rabbi, may I ask
Yes,
a
please.
question? So milk and meat to me is rational, not irrational.
How so?
The sensitivity of the mother to her young is, sort of the ultimate transcendental experience of life. And so, not mixing milk and meat and having the respect of first of all, the souls, the souls of the mother and wherever the milk came from, wherever the meat came from, not to disrespect that relationship. Isn't it similar in a way to sending a mother bird away before one takes the eggs, if that's required?
Right.
Shatnez, that to me, the linen and wool, that I can't figure out, although if you go and sort of figure out what the sheep would feel if how linen is made, and whether that would be sort of disrespectful to an animal, that's taking it to another level, but which I really don't understand. But milk and meat to me is completely rational. Right.
I see what you mean. So certainly, that adds a lot of good reasoning to that commandment. The interesting thing is that it's not, maybe the commentaries, I have to look. Commentaries do mention what you're saying, but it's certainly not mentioned in the Torah of why we ought not to mix meat and milk. Lo tevashel gdi b'chalev imo, in the words of the Torah. I like what you're saying. Very good. Very good. Yeah. And the wool and linen, we have to look at the sheep too. You're right. I don't know. Yeah. There are other commandments, like, for example, speaking of laws of kosher, which is the theme today. And by the way, Diana, thank you for joining in. I apologize. I was apologizing today. We're having Zoom issues, and now they're asking for a password. I tried to eliminate that. I wasn't successful, but I'll get to the bottom of it after this class, hopefully. But thank you for persisting and joining.
And thank you, Diana, for, again, I apologize. I have to apologize for a small U instead of a big one, and that was a disaster. So by the time people saw the second one, but anyway, thank God we're here. So that's all.
Thank God we're here, exactly. And like we said, it teaches us patience and all sorts of other blessings. Okay, so back to the laws of kashrut. There is a law, for example, not to mix, which he hasn't mentioned here, but not to mix meat and fish. That's why very often if you go to kosher events or kosher caterings, you'll see that there is a plate for fish, and they first serve the fish, and then they take away their plate and take away the fish, and then they serve the meat, so that you don't mix meat and fish together. And you'll never see that in a kosher event of a mixture of meat and fish. Now, there is no reasoning to that. Again, it's beyond, it's part of category number 1, not 2 and 3. Category number 1. On the other hand, so the Kabbalists have come up with the reasoning. And the reasoning that they give is because we have to respect the way God created the world, and the structure of the world. There are the creatures that are above the sea, and there are the creatures that are under the sea. And if God decided for the creatures to be under the sea, who are we to mix them with creatures that are above the sea, even on a plate of food? The respect, the strict borders that God created in his world, we too can mix fish and meat. So that's another Kabbalistic reasoning that came, with the ages. But in essence, these laws, like many of the laws of kashrut, are beyond reason. And again, I really believe that they are there to test our relationship, to test our true love towards God, and to see that whether we will fulfill them even though we can't understand them. That's really the deeper idea. Daniela, thank you also for joining us. I know it was crazy today. They're asking for a password now. I wasn't able to eliminate it, so I said,
Rabbi, just say, Rabbi, I'm sorry to bring back the Zoom thing, but what I did with 2 or 3 people, I went to what says Zoom, and then I'm sorry, it says you can invite people. So I've invited people, and then they did not need the passcode, just so you know.
Oh,
I just
very good to know. That's good.
You know what? I just did it. Daniela, I did it with Daniela, and I don't remember who else.
Oh, you can invite.
But Bonita told me that I need a raise. You have to give me more money.
Rabbi, I just want to say to Gila, if this is the worst thing that happens to us this week,
that's it. Amen.
It's not a big deal. And I really
Amen.
appreciate you sending out the email every week. And a
Oh,
capital U versus a small u is so
That's right.
minor in the
Thank
scheme of what you've done for us. So thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amen. Exactly. I
Amen.
agree.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you for mentioning that, Vicky. And hopefully by next class, we'll be fixing all of these issues. All right.
Rabbi, I have a
Any other
question.
comments, questions, disagreements? I know we delved into these intricate laws today, interesting laws of kashrut and the deeper meaning. But I think if we can summarize them, it ought to remind us that even mundane activities such as eating ought to be holy ones. And if we can transform them into holy ones, then we'll align our body, which engages with eating, engages with food for a large part of the day, and maybe of the night, if you wake up in the middle of the night to eat. But a large part of the day, certainly, and we'll be aligning that body with our soul. And by doing so, we'll really be not just refining ourselves, but we'll be actualizing the mission of our soul in this world, which is to turn the body from a materialistic entity to a divine one, to a spiritual one, and thereby turn the entire world that may seem materialistic into a spiritual world in which God feels comfortable to live in.